Let's take a look at some U.S. firearms laws, specifically Stand Your Ground. This will be for educational purposes. We always encourage you to do your own research. The information here was collected in early 2013 and may have changed since then. When we're talking about Stand Your Ground, we're talking about ultimately self-defense. Fundamentally, we're talking about the concept of being innocent until proven guilty. And unfortunately, in recent media coverage, I think that has been blurred. Now, for the longest time, most states considered the victim of a self-defense situation to be guilty of a crime until they could prove that they acted in self-defense. And that was very difficult for a lot of people. Very rarely was that actually used to help to benefit the victim, and people worked to change that. And now, in most states, the victim of a self-defense situation is typically considered innocent unless someone can prove some wrongdoing. And again, this is laws that now protect the victim as opposed to blindly allowing the attacker to use the law to hide behind. And that seems to be what's now under attack in the media. And I'm not sure if that's deliberate or just because the definitions aren't necessarily obvious. So what we're talking about is a duty to retreat and where we can stand our ground. And these are all seem to be blurred recently in media coverage. So we hope to address that with 4 points. Defining stand your ground versus castle doctrine. Talking about the states that have castle doctrine and why this matters. First, let's take a look at the phrase stand your ground. It's been in our vocabulary. It's been a term used to describe the refusal to change your opinion or to give in on an argument. And it's been in our vocabulary probably since the beginning of time when the first person described a fist fight to someone else, because literally the meaning of stand your ground comes from the refusal to move backwards during a fist fight. So it's interesting to see it come full circle. A term that's been used since the beginning of our language is now being used to describe the political concept of needing to retreat or not in a situation where you're attacked. So let's take a look at the stand your ground laws as they stand as laws. Sometimes they're referred to as the line in the sand or the no duty to retreat, again, describing the definition of the phrase. Also, they're sometimes referred to as the make my day laws, depending if someone's trying to manipulate the discussion. But these laws do serve as a real deterrent for criminals, and we can see that because communities that outlaw self-defense do have the highest crime rates, and that's verifiable through FBI data. The most violent cities relate to the cities that prevent self-defense. When we take a look quickly at the history of the stand your ground laws, again in recent media coverage, it almost seems like these are new laws. The concept of self-defense, however, is not. And if you consider the concept of self-defense the concept of stand your ground, we can look at Supreme Court decisions that go back to the 1900s and even earlier that first claim that you can't use self-defense when you started a lethal conflict. In other words, you can't claim self-defense and hide behind that as a criminal. They also define where you can use self-defense. In other words, stand your ground. And again, these date to before the 1900s, so more than 100 years worth of history with these laws, with the concept of self-defense. But when we talk about castle doctrine or castle law, sometimes described as the defense of habitation laws, we're talking about the laws that basically establish a criminal who enters your home is there to cause great bodily harm. In other words, the criminal isn't there to plant roses in your garden. It removes that duty to retreat in any place you have a right to be. So it takes that right of self-defense from your home to anywhere you have a right to be, typically, and again, that'll depend on the state or the state's definition of it. It provides persons using force that will not be prosecuted. In other words, you can't be guilty of murder because you defended yourself. It also prohibits criminals from suing their victims, which gives rights back to the law-abiding victims, and it forces judges and prosecutors to focus on protecting those victims. So when we take a look at the states that have castle law, what we're looking at is the states that have created laws that protect the right of self-defense. And I know that this is still probably confusing, but again, we're posting this video to act as a stimulation for further conversation and hopefully benefit to the community in general. So we're looking at 32 of the states, and again, this information was collected a little bit earlier in the year, and there is no definite line in the sand of what a castle law is, so some people made weigh in differently on which states actually have castle laws. But we can see it's a majority, even if there are some discrepancies here. We can see that it is a majority of the states. And I think it's also interesting to see when we see them on a map here, the states that have some of the highest crime rates are the states that prohibit self-defense, as you can see. Here's another way to look at it, and you can check this out in the PDF, which will be linked below. Now, why does all this matter? I believe that self-defense is really the issue. If we think of stand your ground as the concept of self-defense and castle doctrine as the laws that defend a victim, I think that's an interesting or an important just definition to make, because the concept of castle doctrine is labeled stand your ground in the media currently. What we're also talking about is a duty to retreat, and ultimately if self-defense is defended by our government or restricted by our government. Now, inaccurate definitions are used to manipulate messages. I believe self-defense is really the issue, and I've restated that because there is a larger agenda. If you think it's the attack on freedom or the attack on firearms rights, whatever it is, there are larger agendas at stake here. The question is, are they intentionally manipulating the message, or are they unintentionally blurring the definitions? I suggest we don't wait for the next time our rights are under attack. We're in some of the most violent months of the year, historically, again, through FBI numbers. It's just statistics. We're going to see another violent something that the media will be able to jump on. Why wait for that? Do something to act on it now. Let people know there's a definition here, the actual definitions here, that stand your ground means self-defense, and that real concept of are we innocent until proven guilty, or are we going to let the government go back to considering us all guilty until we can prove that we acted in self-defense. I question the need for more laws. Good, simple laws offer a framework that society can use to work together, whereas complicated laws create a maze where criminals can hide. I'll just leave you with this quote from Senator McCain. And although we wrap everything up into a 7-minute video here, hopefully this will act as a kernel of conversation that you can take on to other people. Here's some links to get some information going. We hope that you support organizations that are support our freedom. We post this information on our websites. We always thank you for your support. Thanks for watching.